Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Scare Money Don't Make Money, changing things up a little bit. Normally, we do record and then submit it, but we thought honestly going live was probably a better option. So today we have a very awesome guest. I'm gonna let him introduce himself in a second. As you know, it's your boy Cam and your boy.
As always, your boy Roy is here. I am here as always, just tired, but I'm here. So,
Yeah, Roy's currently at training right now, so he's you know what? We don't stop. The hotel rooms, it don't matter.
Don't matter. We're gonna get it going. So what's going on? How you doing, Shally?
Doing all right, man. How's it? You hear me okay?
Yep, hear you perfectly. Yeah. So if you don't mind, Shally, if you want to introduce yourself, tell our audience who you are, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, sure. So my name is Shally Steckerl. I've been in the business of recruiting for too long that I don't really know if I want to admit that live on radio. But let's just say a quarter century. How's that?
You are a beast.
We'll stick to that. That sounds good. That sounds good to me. I got the gray hairs to prove it right there.
Season. It's called seasoning. That's seasoning.
Yeah, that's right. It's the grays are coming out. So let's see. And I've been on the side of the business where my main focus is to identify talent. So a big part of my job is to find the right people for the job, find hidden talent, find people that are not easily found, and get them into the recruiting process. And then my colleagues in the rest of the organization sort of take that through. So essentially a way to look at it is I build the pipeline and I fill the pipeline, but then the recruiters work the pipeline.
Gotcha. So, can you explain to them what your organization's called?
Well, I got two businesses. One is my for-profit, and then I've got a nonprofit. The nonprofit is the Sourcing Institute Foundation. We're going to probably be renaming it, but sourcingfoundation.org right now is the website. And there we focus on providing grants and scholarships for people coming out of the military service and military spouses to help them become corporate recruiters. So essentially we provide them, the means possible and training, education to get them into a civilian job as a corporate recruiter. And then hopefully we also work with them to get them jobs. So we're pretty successful with that. Can't make any guarantees, but we do have a lot of connections through our business that allow us to make introductions. So we've been pretty successful with getting people jobs after military in a corporate setting. Most of them are with major employers, sometimes with startups, but not with agencies or staffing firms. And I make that distinction because those are very different jobs.
Correct. Yes. And so, can you first explain to a lot of our viewers, they don't know what necessarily sourcing is, as Roy and I talk about in the military, to us, it's just called research. Hey, do research, just find some people. So, right. But I know in the civilian sector, there are certain, names of things that are more familiar to the civilian sector. So could you kind of talk about sourcing and as far as your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So research is a pretty good way to describe it. I mean, it essentially is the first part of the process, right? Identification. Yeah. So where are they? What do they look like? What companies do they work at? What job titles do they have? Yeah. For you guys, it may have been a little bit more targeted because you go specifically to schools, high schools, colleges. You've got a more defined marketplace. But even outside of that, I mean, what if you get a requirement for someone that's a native speaker in Urdu and has naturalized citizenship? What do you do then? You're not gonna go digging around in high schools. What if you get recruitment requirements for clergy? They have to have experience, or judge advocate that have to have experience. So there's always that skill set that you've got to go and hunt down. It's the same thing in the corporate world. 70-80% of our jobs we can fill through advertising, posting, people applying, coming to us by referrals, et cetera, which is a lot of the same way, military recruiters get referrals and advertising and walk-ins, right? But then there's that other small percentage, whether it's 10, 15, 20%, that we need to go and figure out where these people are. So identifying the landscape, identifying what the talent looks like, and how to approach them, which is another part of it is, the outreach. So a big difference and a big advantage that you guys have, and I speak with authority only because my best friend growing up, ever since we were 8 years old, George and I, my best friend was a military recruiter, retired from the military. In fact, he was in the Navy and also in the Army, and then Army National Reserves. Gotcha. And then he went back in full-time recruiter for many, many, many years. So he and I shared war stories about, hey, what's it like on your side? Oh, let me tell you what's on my side. So we compared notes for like 8 years. And over the years, I've hired probably about 7 or 8 military recruiters into my teams. So, you know, I never sat where you sit, but I'm familiar with, I'm friendly, right, with it.
No, yeah.
So, so a big part of it is initiating contact, right?
Yeah.
You guys are a lot more assertive in your outreach. You can message someone 5, 6, 7 times. You call, you text, you email. Corporate recruiters tend to just only contact somebody once. So they'll send an email and then that's it, right? And I come in and go, hey, no, you got to try 5 times. You got to try 6 times. You got to text them. And that's different for them. So I teach corporate recruiters how to do that, which is second nature to you guys. And then, you know, it's a matter of getting them on the phone and seeing if they're interested. Qualification, right? Are you interested? Are you qualified? Can you do the minimum? Then I put them into the process and the recruiter takes over from there. So really it does equate to research, essentially the same way that you describe it.
Gotcha. And that's funny because that's exactly the same thing we talked about with we talked about was it Ben? We were talking about the follow-up. The follow-up is so key, and that's where I guess you would say, us military recruiters, we really are like bred into us because it's like, oh, I message this person and they say, well, did you follow up?
No,
well,
right. Yeah, we don't do that. Nice.
Would you follow it again?
Did you call them? Did you go to their house?
Did you bring him a sandwich?
Did you go pick them up?
Yeah. So so there are like a lot of different ways of following up. Like, so do you do like the normal traditional follow up, like email, text, or like how in depth do you go with your follow ups?
Well, so I've got a pretty formulaic cadence that I built in. I'll send an email first because email is usually faster, right? So let's say I got 100 prospects. I'm going to be able to hit 100 people all at once instead of having to, make 100 calls. So I'll hit that list with 100 and maybe 20 or 30 of them reply back. That means I only got 70 that I need to follow up with. And that 70 I'll send text messages to, which is again pretty quick. I get another 10 responses. Now I only got 60. Then those 60 get a call. So I do, email, text, call. And by then I probably am down to maybe 50. And I start over the cycle again. Now, for some of them, I might have Facebook or Twitter accounts or Pinterest or Instagram or Snapchat or WeChat or WhatsApp or whatever. Can't do some of those now because of the certain regulations, but Facebook and Twitter, for example. So I'll include that as my next cycle. Instead of maybe texting, I'll send them Facebook. Oh. So then I'll do that evolution. And it's 24, 24, 24, 48, 48.
So 24 hours.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Basically, wait a day, wait 2 days, wait 2 days, which usually extends into the second week.
See, that's interesting because you just said that you get like a 30% callback or email back rate.
The first email, 20 to 30 is good, right?
Okay.
And then our text messages, you get a little bit more. Sometimes people don't respond because they're not around, and that happens. They're on vacation, they're traveling, so that's why I wait, for the next week. But all in all, I'm shooting to get about 50 to 60% response rate all in before I start thinking about abandoning that lead.
For sure. And that was something I think when I came into recruiting, Roy had been there for a little bit longer than I have. And I came in at a really good time. Like Air Force recruiting realized like, ooh, if we get iPhones, it may, stuff like that. So I walked in the door with a lot more technology than a lot of recruiters back then. And that was a big thing I did. I just started texting people. They're like, well, did you call them? And I'm like, no. And they're like, why not? And I'm like,
because they text me back.
If you look at the statistics, like, and I don't know if you remember, I used to tell our flight chief all that time, Roy, he'd be like, well, you didn't call them. I'm like, statistically, they're not going to answer my phone call, but they will answer my text message.
Yep.
And only now, I think, has the military probably really started to understand that, which has given a lot of recruiters a lot more leeway in contact. I don't know. I mean, Roy's he's actually a manager of a recruiting team. So what do you think as far as the text message is concerned?
Right.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you
I
can hear me.
can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you, Roy probably used to get paper lists back in the day.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
he did.
there wasn't even a CRM or anything like that he put things into. So texting would be like you grab your phone and you got to push one of the, that's pretty tedious. Nowadays, we got apps where we can actually upload the list and we can send out text messages. So it's a little bit easier. But yeah, to me, what I find is there's a certain inherent psychology. Okay. If and I like to test everything out on myself first.
Yeah.
I think about, is this going to work for me? Is this going to work for my friends? Is it going to work for my colleagues before I really commit to something? And when it comes to texting, here's the way I figured it would happen. If you call me and your number is not in my contacts, you just come up as a phone number. It doesn't show your name or anything like that. Think about it for yourself. How many times you pick up the phone when it's just a number and you got no name?
Yeah.
You don't. You just don't do it.
Yeah.
You let it go to voicemail because you don't know who that person is. Unless you're expecting a call or, you have an idea. But so that's when I thought, well, what if I have a caller ID? There's no caller ID on cell phones unless you buy software for it. But if I send you a text message first, and in the text message, I give you my name, then when I call you and you see the number come up, that number already has a name associated through the text message. And with the iPhones now, it actually sends your contact card and your picture. So when I call, the photo comes through, especially if you're broadcasting it.
Yeah.
So now you're not an alien or an unknown object. You are now someone that's in their phone. So they have a higher propensity to actually pick up the phone this time around because you texted them. It's the same thing used to be the case with emails. I would email first. That way, when I call, I would reference the email. Hey, Sean, I emailed you yesterday. Wanted to see if you were, you had a chance to look at my message. Sometimes they look at their emails, sometimes they don't, and then they call me back.
Yeah.
Sometimes they call me back because I said I emailed them, even if they never read the email. I end up having conversations with people who are like, "Yeah, I didn't read the email. I know they didn't get it. They probably didn't even get it. It went to spam or something." So,
I know that my old boss, he used to tell us to send an email and say that there is an attachment, but don't put the attachment. Because then somebody's like, well, wait a minute. We're like, where's the attachment at? So then they email you back like, hey, I didn't get the attachment. You're like, oh, well, since we're going to talk anyways.
That's smart.
I should try that. I'm going to try. Here, attaches your offer letter. Please reply back that you accept.
Exactly. No, exactly. It worked. I
they reply like, well, what's the offer? I can't see the attachment. Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. But since I have you on the phone.
My bad. Oh,
I like it.
I remember the first time it worked, I had to walk in his office and I was like, okay, that worked. Because I was like, there's no way. But it made sense, though, when you think about it, because curiosity.
Yes. Okay, so I got a question now that I'm back on. So what, I don't like to say tactics, but like what methods you used back when you first started do you think are still successful in utilization today? Because like we always talk about like snail mail and things of that nature. So like what things have you seen still work, no matter how archaic it is, like still work today?
Yeah. Mixing it up with the messaging still works, right? Whether it used to be phone, then email, now it's email, then phone, or text, then phone, but mixing it up always works because there's a psychological process that happens there too, which is if you call someone and you text them or you email them and you call them or you mix it up, you're not a spammer, you're not a telemarketer, because spammers only email you once, right? Telemarketers only call you, they don't email you. So when you have multiple contacts or points of contact for someone, they get the message, even if it's subliminal, that this is legit. Like you can't possibly be, some kind of spam or whatever. So that definitely works. You mentioned postcards. There are some professions today where that still works, particularly where people are on their feet a lot. For example, in healthcare, nurses, PTs, RNs, OTs, a lot of those therapists, because they may have a phone with them all day long, but they really aren't on the phone for much more than just a quick text message here and there. But you can obtain the lists of licensing and certification from the appropriate agencies, and you can send them all postcards for 17 cents a copy.
Yep.
And that is you can go online, totally customize the postcard, say whatever you want, put some nice images on there, and send it all out, in one day, and they all get it, kind of like a mass email. So that still works in some professions, but only those where you can obtain those lists. If you're talking to people that they don't have a licensure database, then that won't work. The other technique that still works, believe it or not, is just searching people up on Google. I mean, Google was around maybe not 25 years ago, but 20 years ago. So, from the very beginning, I was always going to just go out there and try to do some recon on search engines and see what's going on with company names, with job titles, and mix it up a little bit and see if I can get some, additional details. You might put someone's name in and company name, like their name and where they work, and you get a page that's got their email address. Boom, you're done, right?
Yeah.
Or it's got their page with call me, or even their resume. So that still works today. But very few people do it because they're lazy and they're used to doing just LinkedIn. They go on LinkedIn and they think everything's on LinkedIn. Well, no, not exactly.
It's not. I've been learning that as I've been doing it. So Jason Scott had a question. You pretty much answered it. I think I know kind of what your answer might be, just because I've heavily involved myself in the sourcing, the world, Facebook and things like that. But his question was, where can I find information on how to start sourcing for talent? And I'm guessing he's talking about maybe the bullying method and things like that. That really is an art, I guess you would say.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're former military, then you qualify for a scholarship with the Sourcing Institute Foundation. So that would be a good place to start, because we can hook you up with official, training and get you an online curriculum. Other than that, there's a lot of information out there. The problem with most of the people in corporate that do blogs and write about it is they're typically doing it for self-promotion, for the purposes of making themselves look good so they can get a better job.
Gotcha.
A lot of them go out there and they talk the talk, and then they get another job. You don't hear from them for 3 years until it's time for, guess what, another job.
Yeah.
Then they're writing articles and posting and speaking at conferences. They get another job, and then they disappear for 3 years. So sometimes that's kind of like it's a gimmick, right? You gotta take a look. If you're gonna learn from somebody online like me, check out their history, right? Have they been constantly out there sharing, and have they been doing the job? So those are the two things. Are they really legitimately sharing because they want to share, and are they really doing the job? You got to have both. Sharing is good, but if you're sharing but you've never done the job, then I'm sorry, not going to trust you as much.
No,
If you've done the job, you only share every 3 years, then I'm sorry, not going to trust you as much. So that's what I would look at. There's a lot out there. I've got a web page. It's a Start Me page. I can shoot you guys over. Okay. Where there's a whole list of resources and blogs, and for people that are looking for work as recruiters. Okay. So it's like a recruiting job resource page. So I can show you guys the link. It's got a bunch of different resources, blogs, and places where you can go and connect. So that would be a good place to start.
Look for it in the comments, Jason. We'll put it there for you. And I know this was something that definitely. You were the first person that came to mind. When I really dove into this, I don't know, probably a year and a half. I think 2 years ago when I first contacted you. That was kind of the thing. Is I remember telling Roy about it. I was like, oh my God, there's this whole world of people who just try and teach each other how to find people, man. And it's I know they just did the conference recently, the free conference that you were contributed for at the what is it, the magazine Recruiter? Gosh, can't think of it.
HRTX.
Yeah, HRTX. Yeah, and I was telling Roy, I was telling him all about it, and I remember just looking at it, and it just got so nitty gritty. As far as you type in the person's, or you type in the industry that you're working for, how many miles you want them to be from where this place is at. Now, and it'll blow your mind at how specific you can get with some of these things.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. So HRTX is probably a good place to go. They've got these events every couple of months or so.
Yeah.
And they've got a pretty broad audience for different industries. especially they've got a lot of audience in the cleared space. So people that work in government and military and those types of roles, that might be an interesting career transition for some of you folks. I mean, Lockheed and Boeing and CACI and SAIC and a lot of those companies, Booz Allen, they're going to hire right out of the military. So having that background and knowing that industry, so to speak, the keyword is probably a good advantage.
Yeah.
So I put it in the chat, by the way.
I got it. Yep, I got it.
Yeah. So if you want to send it, I can't send it to the comments, but you can.
Oh no, yeah, that's fine. So I mean, Roy, what questions do you have? I know you're kind of I'm usually telling you about these things.
Yeah, I know, right?
So now that you have the man, the myth, the legend.
I mean, because it's kind of choppy for me, like where I'm at, but I'm just soaking it all in because just those different search engines and like you said, a lot of times we hear about LinkedIn, and I'm trying to just formulate, especially on the military recruiter side of the house, how can we come up with a game plan to find certain people, without searching for job titles and things, especially in this vast world that we live in now, where everything is almost virtual. So you can't find certain career fields by typing in somebody's name and job title, because a lot of them don't have that job title to search for.
Right.
So just trying to, and I'm using it for the audience, just to try to think as far as you possibly can outside the box to try to find people that you really need.
That's a good question. My advice on that is to essentially look for the footprint, right? Like if you're tracking someone, right? Yeah. Put your recon hat on, and when you're tracking someone or a vehicle or whatever, you're going to look for the prints that it leaves behind. Yeah. You can't necessarily identify much more than that, because what's left is just this historical record of something passing by. So it's the broken twigs, it's the displaced dirt, it's the bent grass blades, it's the shape of the shoe, it's so those kinds of things. So think about, in terms of that, think about what footprint your candidate leaves behind. Yeah. What do they talk about? What do they say? What are the words that they use that only they use, that only that particular part of the population uses, that is endemic, that other people won't understand, right? If I start talking about MOCs, well, for you guys, what's the Air Force equivalent? MSAs, the occupational codes.
AFSC.
AFS, yeah. So if I start talking about those, only somebody else that's in the Air Force is going to know what those are, right? Yeah. So what are those little things, the hints that people leave behind? And then the other side of that is what is the absence of stuff? So sometimes think about, what is not there that should be there? When, for example, if I make reference to unclassified information, the only reason why I would make reference to unclassified anything is if I had access to the opposite of that. Yeah. Right? Because nobody talks about unclassified information unless they also know classified information, right? So the fact that I'm dropping hints like, this information is unclassified, maybe that's because some of the other stuff that I work with is not unclassified. Yeah. Civilians don't talk like that, right? So what are the other footprints, right? In the Navy, I don't know if you guys know Navy all that much, but they've got all kinds of nicknames for their jobs. Firemen that work in nuclear submarines that have access to the reactor are called knuckle draggers. Not a pretty name. They don't like being called that. But you look that up in a forum and you see people being, mentioned by that or referring to themselves to that, that's what they did. They don't have to have a job title that says nuclear reactor electrical engineer. Yeah. If they're called knuckle dragger, they were in the reactor room. Yeah. Yeah. And that requires that kind of clearance. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So what is not there that is being intentionally left out? Yeah. What are they not mentioning? So those are the two things I would look like. It's sort of like, what's the trail that they leave behind unintentionally, and what's the trail that they leave behind by intentionally mentioning something that is not supposed to be there? It's
such a deep dive. I know, recently, I've in an effort to learn more about the sourcing for when I exit the military, like I've been working with somebody to try and source certain jobs, and I know like service like a ServiceNow admin / developer. I have zero idea what that is, but I know that if I go into like LinkedIn or Google and I type in ServiceNow and then looking for work, it's going to pull up everybody who has a ServiceNow certification and everybody who's identified they're looking for work.
Sometimes you end up with a lot of false positives with that, right?
Correct.
Because
yeah.
they might have ServiceNow as a admin or as some data entry clerk or something like that, but they're not an architect. They're not an engineer. They don't know how to fix it or tweak it. So you get everybody that says, I know ServiceNow.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people would say, oh, I know Access, Microsoft. That nobody talks about that anymore. But Access is such a common word that if you had the word Access on your resume, it would pop up, and it's not the right kind of access, right? It's Microsoft Access.
Yeah. So
you get all those false positives with keywords, and more and more technology these days is taking on that friendly name, right? Like the Android operating systems, Lollipop and Vanilla Cake and ice cream or whatever. By searching on a resume database for ice cream, you're going to get all kinds of wacky results, right? So you got to learn how to find the synonyms or the alternative ways for those keywords to be described, and not limit yourself to just ServiceNow. But what are the functionalities? What are the operations? What are they doing with ServiceNow? Are they programming it? Are they customizing it? Are they configuring it? And then use those verbs. Yeah. The language that you search for is a language of action words. So what is it they do? Like, what does this person do? If I'm a recruiter, I find people, I submit people, I interview people. Those phrases, find candidates, find people, submit candidates, interview candidates. Those phrases are good keyword searches to use to find recruiters. Yeah. So what do your people do? They configure ServiceNow, or they create fields, or they create tables, or they create triggers and stored procedures and so on. So you want to use the phrase more so than the keyword, because the keyword can go both ways. It can bring you good quality results, but it can also distract you with all these false positives. Yeah. And you're also leaving behind people that don't use that keyword.
See, and that's like, I think that's really what took me further, because and that actually happened. Like one of the women that I hit up, she's like, "Oh, I'm a ServiceNow admin, but I'm not a developer. Like I'm this person." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And obviously I'm a novice, so I can be like, "Sorry, like my bad," But that was the whole point of me doing it now, so that when the time comes where I actually have to like feed my family off of it, I'm a little bit more experienced.
And what's the developer do? They're writing code. So they write code, or they wrote code, or lines of code. That's what I want you to think about, is dig a little bit deeper into what's the language that they're actually using to talk about what they do, as opposed to the job title that you would expect them to have.
Exactly.
A lot of people, fake their job titles anyway. Not fake, but like they
embellish.
They embellish. Like I didn't know that CEO is not a thing unless you're a corporation.
Right.
Like I didn't. Yeah. Like if you have an LLC, like you're not a CEO of anything. Like you're probably a president.
Exactly. But a lot of people call themselves CEO because it looks good. Right.
So, and I think
you're not a public officer because you're not a publicly traded company, so you're not a public officer. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what. Yeah, like I know, like during the HRTX seminar, that was some of the strings of how long some of these things can get. It was like mind exploding, just because it's like you said, it's very specific. Like they'll put in coding /this /this / and you're just like, the system can really obviously it's a computer, so we know it can do that, but it's more so to us who aren't used to those types of things. We're like, it can really do all this.
It can, but you know what? You're better off trimming it down and focusing on the real essence of what you're looking for, because once you get pretty practiced at it, what you're talking about does become second nature, and there's certainly a place for it. But when you start out trying to do something like that, it's going to trip you up more often than not. Yeah. So you're better off just kind of think about what's exactly there versus not what are all the possibilities of what's there, or even worse, what's not there. Because once you start getting into what's not there, you have a lot of not this, not that, not the other. Then you're eliminating too many things, and you end up trapping yourself into into getting really bad results. So drill down on what is exactly that. What do I think is always going to be there? Like, here's a tip. In a resume, the word resume very seldom appears.
That is true. It actually,
Open up the average resume. 9 out of 10 resumes don't say this is a resume or resume. They might have the name resume, like resume Shally Steckerl .doc maybe, but the actual document in the words that doesn't say resume most of the time. Very rarely. It's real estate you don't want to take up because you only get so much paper. You might want to put resume on there. But one thing that's always going to be on there?
Job title or experience.
Not always. Sometimes it's objective. Sometimes it's history, employment history. The word present is in almost every resume.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, because from whenever your last job was to present.
Almost always. I mean, sometimes you see resumes without it. Yeah. But more than often, the exception is not to have that. More than often, it will say from such a date to present. And so the word present appears in resumes. When you have the word present within 2 or 3 words of a year, so you have a year like 2014 and the word present really close together, very, very frequently, those things combined, year dash present, that's almost always a resume. It's not usually anything but a resume.
So you would search that you could search that potentially on LinkedIn or Google. Oh, Google, and it'll pull up resumes.
Look for the phrase, 2014 to present, and then add some skill like ServiceNow, and then some action word like develop or developing or write code or writing code or wrote code, and boom, you're on your way. That's exactly what you want. It's not all these other alternatives.
Yeah. Huh.
Mind blown. Mind blown.
All right. Well,
you can always expand, right? There's nothing wrong with adding another thing, replacing 2014 with 2015. Sure, somebody out there is going to say, but Shally, it's not always to present. Sometimes it's till date. Okay, start with present. When you exhaust all that, take that out and put in till date or till current until now or whatever. 5 or 6 iterations later, and you've covered all the bases. So you're better off drilling down on it's. I refer to it as sniping. You want to snipe and get that shot right where you want it, instead of trawling, casting a wide net there, and grab all the fish that you can, and then you got to go, not this one, not this one, not this one, not this one. Throw it back, too little, too big, too old, too young. But if you snipe, you get that 1 or 2 or whatever you got in your hand, and then you just you get on the phone, make the call, close the deal. Gotcha.
All right. Well, dang. Well, I think that's a good point of the end of the show. That's exactly what we're looking for. I appreciate you, man.
All right, man.
I love recruiting. So does Roy, but I've taken a lot more of a dive into the civilian sector than your average recruiter, just because I'm like, man, there's so many skills and tools and things that the civilian sector does that either we could utilize, but also, that's my plan when I get out. So that's why I really try and, bring these things forefront to a lot of our guys. And I always talk to Roy about it, and he's like, dang, for real? Like, you can do that? And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know how to do it, but you can do it.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, if you guys are almost ready to transition out and you're looking for work, check out the Sourcing Foundation, or just reach out to me personally. I mean, I can introduce you to my clients and, colleagues and things like that, and help you get a job. I mean, your skills are very transferable. Yeah. Look, you guys have, from where you sit, you have an advantage in a couple of really big areas. None of y'all are afraid of the phone. No. Corporate recruiters are scared of the phone. It's the heaviest object that they've ever picked up. Okay. And so you guys have that advantage, and then you also have the drive and the determination and the consistent approach, right? Yeah. You know that you got to follow up. That's huge. Yeah. So you got the follow up, and you got no fear of the phone. Those two things put you at a significant advantage. All you got to do is some of this stuff that I just told you. You got to learn it. It's a couple of online courses. So check it out and shoot me a note.
All right. Well,
Be happy to help you out.
no, we appreciate it. Roy, you
Yes.
got any last minute words or questions?
No last questions. A lot of times, the we try to like fight like, oh, like that stuff doesn't work. It doesn't
No.
work. It doesn't work out for me. But it has been tried and true, and it will continue to be tried and true because it works. Because it all goes back to psychology in a sense.
Yeah.
It's just the
That's
follow up and
Yep.
everything goes back to the mind. Like I don't know if anybody watched that new documentary on Netflix about social media. It's very interesting. Yeah, man, Cam, if you haven't checked it out, it's interesting. It's
All
very
right.
interesting.
Gotta
So
put it on my watch list.
yeah, so I'll definitely encourage anybody to watch it and just make you think about the human mind. So that's all I got.
Oh, one last thing. We always ask all the guests, what does scared money don't make money mean to you?
Oh yeah, we can't leave without saying that. What does it mean to you?
It means if you're afraid of success, you're not going to succeed.
Boom. I like it. In a nutshell, I like it.
I'm at a few words.
I like that. That's a very good. I like
Yeah,
that.
it's funny. Every guest we had, like they go on the long thing, boom. He's like, hey.
Pretty clear to me.
Yep.
Hey, but you like we said, psychology. Everyone's like, "Oh, let me dive." But no, we appreciate it, sir. And
yes.
do you have any last minute comments or anything?
No, I'm honored to be on here. I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to be here. And hey, keep up the good work. As a recruiter, I know you don't get to see thank you very much. You don't, people don't say thank you. So at least for me, thank you for what you do. For real, honestly. Yeah.
We appreciate you. And hey, that's a wrap, y'all. Appreciate y'all
All right.
listening to our first live, and we'll see y'all later.
That's it.